Hello, fellow bibliophiles, and welcome back to Blatantly Bookish. I'm Marissa, and today I would like to take you on a tour of my nonfiction shelf. So you're getting to see some books that you don't normally see on my channel. These two shelves are just contemporary fiction, some historical fiction, and down here is the shelf that we're really going to focus on today. It is my nonfiction collection. It is overflowing. It no longer fits on one shelf, really, and so I actually do have some nonfiction in other places. I grabbed a few of them to show you today, but the vast majority of my Jane Austen nonfiction is on my Jane Austen shelf. The vast majority of my Victorian related nonfiction is in with my Victorian fiction. I'm sure I'll talk plenty about my Jane Austen nonfiction closer to Jane Austen July, and you've probably already seen most of it if you've ever watched my Jane Austen shelf tour. Although I do think I have a few new ones in there. So I'll talk about those more in the coming year. But right now I'd like to focus on these guys. So let's take a closer look at the books. I will give you a close-up of the bookshelf if I can manage it, because this is kind of an awkward little filming setup here. And then I'll go through each of the books and just discuss them a little bit. You can see the kinds of nonfiction that I keep on my shelves. Let's go through the books. So I've taken the ones on the top here down so that we could discuss them first and grab the other ones nice and easily. And I think I'm also going to start with the pile that I grabbed from various other shelves in my apartment. We have Why I Write by George Orwell. This is a short little essay all about George Orwell and his experience with writing and why he writes. It's an essay that I may or may not have actually read in college, but I love George Orwell, and I think he's just an amazing political writer, and an amazing writer in general. I don't have to qualify that with political. So I'm looking forward to dipping into this one again at some point. We have a newer acquisition of mine, Parallel Lives by Phyllis Rose. This is about 5 Victorian marriages, specifically about 5 different authors' Victorian marriages. Let me just make sure I get them all for you. John Ruskin, Thomas Carlyle, John Stuart Mill, Charles Dickens, and George Eliot, aka Marianne Evans. 3 of these unions were devoid of passion, 1 degenerated into a widely publicized scandal, and the sole happy one was the most shocking of all. This is one that I'm excited to read, Victorian nonfiction, though it is not well represented on this particular shelf, is definitely one of my interests. Harriet Wilson's memoirs. These are the memoirs of one of the most famous courtesans of her time during the Regency era. She had highly distinguished clients such as the Duke of Wellington and Lord Byron. And when she was hard-pressed for money in middle age, she had the genius idea to sell her memoirs. She threatened to sell her memoirs and offered any of her clients the opportunity to pay her £200, and if they did that, she would not publish her escapades with them in particular. She did publish her memoirs, however, and it caused quite the scandal, as you might imagine. Life Below Stairs, True Lives of Edwardian Servants by Alison Maloney. This is all about the life of servants, as it suggests, in grand manor houses in England, a la Downton Abbey, if you will. It focuses on the servants' headquarters and on a way of life that doesn't really exist anymore. Sex with Kings by Eleanor Herman, 500 years of learning all about different kings and their sex lives, their various mistresses, and adulterous affairs. The Life of Elizabeth I by Alison Weir. Georgiana, Duchess of Devonshire by Amanda Foreman. This is all about Georgiana and her fame, her public life, her experience in fashionable society, as well as political salons, and just the general debauchery of the late 1700s. The Hare with Amber Eyes by Edmund de Waal. Edmund de Waal is a famous ceramicist, and this is his exploration into his family's history and how it's entwined with this very special collection of Japanese sculptures made of ivory and wood. There are all these different animals, and they're called Netsuke. It especially focuses on their survival through Nazi Germany and World War II. Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil by John Berendt. This is true crime that takes place in Savannah, Georgia. The back of the book says it's one of the only true crime books that's going to make you want to book a bed and breakfast and extended weekend at the scene of the crime. The Library Book by Susan Orlean. This is about the 1986 fire that took place in the Los Angeles Public Library, which destroyed millions of books. And it focuses on the mystery behind that fire. Was it set on purpose? If so, who started it? And how did this event occur? Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rilke. This is one of my favorite nonfiction books of all time. It's all about Rilke's reflections on art and creativity, and it just feels like he's speaking directly to you. Technically, they're responses to someone else's letters, but it just feels like he's responding to you himself. The Tao of Pooh and the Day of Piglet by Benjamin Hoff. These are all about the philosophies of Taoism and how the beloved characters from the classic children's tale Winnie the Pooh embody the philosophies of Taoism. Now we have a series of yoga and mindfulness books, the first of which is the Yamas and Niyamas, Exploring Yoga's Ethical Practice by Deborah Adele. This book is a really wonderful introduction to the philosophies of yoga, the part of yoga that isn't necessarily contorting yourself into various poses. It goes over everything in a really approachable way and is a book that's really fun to dip in and out of, read a little each night, and just remind yourself about the fundamentals of the spirituality of yoga. And here we have Yoga Nidra by Richard Miller. This is all about the spirituality of yoga as well. It's about meditation and relaxation within the yoga practice. Wherever you go, there you are. Mindfulness Meditation in Everyday Life by John Kabat-Zinn. This was actually oddly recommended to me in dental school, and I haven't gotten around to it yet, but it is supposed to be a fundamental text on mindfulness and meditation. Light on Yoga by B.K.S. Iyengar. This is considered the Bible of modern yoga. It has insanely detailed descriptions all about how to get into different poses, including illustrations of the poses and descriptions of breathing techniques as well. I personally don't find it very helpful. I find it difficult to know what they're describing based on what I'm reading, but it's still a text that I'm glad I have just in case I have a question on a particular pose. And you get to see a really, really flexible person do some of these poses. I think that's also part of the problem, though, is that I'm not this flexible, and so if I tried to do some of these poses exactly the way they're illustrated, I would end up really injuring myself. Next, we have my Bill Brysons. I love Bill Bryson as a nonfiction author. We have Notes from a Small Island, all about Britain. We have In a Sunburned Country, all about Australia. We have my favorite, The Mother Tongue, English and How It Got That Way, all about the evolution of the English language, how the English language changes so much over time, and it's also a really fantastic introduction to linguistics in general. A book that I think will make a wonderful companion to The Mother Tongue, but one that I haven't gotten around to yet, is Made in America, An Informal History of English Language in the United States. This one focuses more on English within the United States and how it's different than English elsewhere and how it's evolved and changed over time as well. I think these two will be wonderful together, and I'm due for a reread of The Mother Tongue, so it would be fun to read them in close succession. And then we have Bill Bryson's take on Shakespeare, which I hope to get to at some point as well. The Professor and the Madman, all about the creation of the Oxford English Dictionary. And then we have a few David Sedaris's. I used to really love David Sedaris, but haven't read him in a little while now. His style is essays and ruminations on life. They're often really humorous, and they're good fun. I think my most recent reads by him are Calypso and Me Talk Pretty. But here I have Let's Explore Diabetes with Owls, Barrel Fever, and When You Were Engulfed in Flames. Joan Didion's The Year of Magical Thinking. I haven't read this one yet, and I don't plan to until the time is right. It's a book all about grief and loss, and I think when I need it most, it will be here for me. Here I have the first two of Madeleine L'Engle's Crosswicks journals. I really love these editions, and this first one was just the most amazing find. I got it from the Strand, and it's actually a signed Madeleine L'Engle for $1. It was just the most amazing day when I found this book. I'm hoping to collect all of these journals in these editions. I think there are maybe 4 or 5 of them. Here we have Writing Down the Bones by Natalie Goldberg. Snippets of this were actually read to me when I was in 5th grade, and they really resonated with me. There's some phenomenal writing advice in here. It really helped me hone my writing at a young age, and I think if I ever wanted to go back to writing, because it's not like I am an avid writer, I would definitely want to revisit this book. Even if I don't start writing again, just reading about writing is something I really enjoy. A Book of One's Own, People and Their Diaries by Thomas Mallon. This book is all about diaries and journaling, what makes people have that drive to chronicle their lives, and it also includes a lot of really interesting quotes from famous authors and from people who diligently kept diaries. Ex Libris, Confessions of a Common Reader by Anne Fadiman. This is all about Anne Fadiman's lifelong love affair with books and language, and it's just a wonderful little cozy series of essays. Anyone who loves reading and loves books should read this one. I just can't imagine that you won't love it as much as I did. This is actually my 2nd or 3rd copy of this book because I keep giving my copy to friends as gifts and then realizing how much I want a copy of my own on my shelves. How to Read a Novelist by John Freeman. Margaret Atwood, Negotiating with the Dead, a writer on writing. I really like reading all about famous authors and about their experiences with their own writing and their experiences with literature in general, clearly, as you can tell from this section of the shelf. Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. This one is part memoir and part writing advice. Aspects of the Novel by E.M. Forster. This is one of my favorite novelists discussing what makes a novel, what all English language novels have in common, and just the importance of different aspects of novels. The Rise of the Novel by Ian Watt. This is a seminal academic text about the rise of the novel, about how the novel came to be as an art form. This focuses mostly on 18th century novels and how those came to be, specifically books like Pamela, Tom Jones, Moll Flanders. And in examining those books, it shows how they paved the way for future novels, specifically the Victorians, and even later novels that we're familiar with. The Art of Victorian Prose. This is a series of academic essays all about Victorian literature. It's a little dense, so I haven't read much of it, but I love dipping in and out of some of these denser texts. Why Buffy Matters. The Art of Buffy the Vampire Slayer by Rhonda Wilcox. This is a series of essays that dissect the themes and events in the show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's kind of more of like an academic text on Buffy, and it's one that I always wanted to read while rewatching the TV show, but I've never gotten around to doing the two together. SPQR, A History of Ancient Rome by Mary Beard. Mythology by Edith Hamilton. Morphology of the Folk Tale by V. Prop. I'm pretty sure this was actually one of my husband's textbooks from college, and I think it focuses specifically on the Russian folktale. Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, Women Writers Explore Their Favorite Fairy Tales, a series of essays by female authors all about why certain fairy tales resonate with them. Little Red Riding Hood Uncloaked, Sex, Morality, and the Evolution of a Fairy Tale by Catherine Orenstein. My interest in this one was heavily inspired by Jen Campbell's BookTube channel and her series of videos all about fairy tales. It's really interesting to see how a fairy tale evolves over time, different versions of fairy tales, and what they say about the time period and the location which they come from. Similarly, we have In Search of Dracula by Raymond T. McNally and Radu Florescu. This is all about the legend, the myth, the folklore, all surrounding Dracula. I'm so tempted to always read this in the month of October, right around Halloween, but of course I'm always completely entrenched in Victober at that time and never quite get around to it. A History of Witchcraft, Sorcerers, Heretics, and Pagans by Jeffrey B. Russell. And last but not least, From the Beast to the Blonde on Fairy Tales and Their Tellers by Marina Warner. So those were all the nonfiction books on my shelf. I hope you guys enjoyed taking a look at them. As you can see, there are very specific niches and themes of books when it comes to nonfiction that I like to collect and that I like to read about. What kinds of nonfiction books do you like to collect, or what kinds of nonfiction books do you like to read? And are there any nonfiction books that you saw today that you hope I get around to reading very, very soon? A lot of those books are unread, partially because a lot of them are very dense, and so I kind of dip in and out of them. But also a lot of them have just been on my shelves for years. I think I forget a little bit about this nonfiction shelf because it is on the bottom and there is usually a chair blocking it. And of course, like I said earlier, these are not all of the nonfiction books I own. I have a whole collection of Jane Austen related nonfiction that I'll probably discuss in a video closer to Jane Austen July. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? I would love to hear all of your thoughts and comments in the comment section down below. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you in another bookish video very soon. Bye!